Thank you to Thunderbird Perch for making this video possible. A new world awaits. Introduction. Framing the historical and investigative challenge. This report delivers an exhaustive analysis of the history, construction, and early use of Crystal Park Road, located above Manitou Springs, Colorado. The analysis moves beyond the accepted corporate history to investigate the compelling thesis that the initial narrative surrounding the road's creation may have been intentionally incomplete, potentially concealing a larger strategic involvement by the U.S. government, specifically the military, in its development. The purpose of the report and the core hypothesis. The investigation seeks to establish the definitive answers to the who, when, why, and how of the road's construction, drawing upon limited, yet highly specific, early 20th century documentation. While the official history attributes the project entirely to a private commercial entity, the sheer scale, engineering complexity, and inclusion of advanced communications technology suggest potential external dependencies. This report will rigorously test the theory that the immense cost, logistics, and technical skill required necessitated a non-commercial partnership, likely with a government entity, which required maintaining a public facade of purely private enterprise. To evaluate the claim of an altered story, the analysis must scrutinize the technical anomalies against established military infrastructure practices of the era. Geographical and historical context. Manitou Springs and the Pikes Peak region, 1890 to 1920. Crystal Park is situated high above Manitou Springs, a location historically established as a prominent health and tourist resort. The land surrounding the road's destination, Crystal Park, was well known as a tourist attraction before transitioning into a modern private gated community. The construction of the road occurred during a pivotal period in American transportation history, the transition from reliance on rail and horse-drawn carriages to the burgeoning power of the automobile. Manitou Springs already featured significant historical infrastructure, such as the old wagon road through Ute Pass and the presence of the Manitou Mineral Water Company, memorialized by the Wheeler Clock in 1890. By the early 1910s, mountain towns recognized that continued economic vitality depended on aggressive infrastructure modernization to accommodate the new class of sightseeing motorists. Crystal Park Road was specifically conceived during this critical era to capture the burgeoning automobile tourist trade. Methodological approach, synthesizing corporate records, engineering specifics, and contextual precedents. To achieve a comprehensive understanding, this report synthesizes the announcements made by the Crystal Park Company with contemporaneous engineering and military logistical standards. The challenge inherent in this investigation is that corporate histories seeking to secure investment often simplify or outright omit details regarding government assistance or undisclosed rights of way to maintain a narrative of private success. Therefore, the analysis focuses on identifying circumstantial evidence, specifically engineering features that are disproportionately expensive or sophisticated for a typical tourist road, to validate the hypothesis of strategic military involvement. The key pieces of evidence include the timing of corporate financing secured via New York, the specific design feature of the automobile turntable, and the explicit mention of advanced communication systems. If you are enjoying this video, take time now to click the like and share button, subscribe to our channel for more, and share it with all your friends. 2. The commercial imperative. The road's official genesis. The who and why. The accepted history of the Crystal Park Road firmly places its construction within the realm of commercial tourism development driven by private capital. The records explicitly identify the primary actors and motivations, setting the benchmark against which the hypothesis of external involvement must be measured. The visionaries, the Crystal Park Company and W.C. Dotterer. The project was executed by the Crystal Park Company under the leadership of its president, W.C. Dotterer. Dotterer appears to have been the driving force behind the necessary capital infusion and planning. Reports from the time indicate that Dotterer had just returned from New York prior to resuming work on the road, a detail that strongly suggests he was securing critical investment or engineering consultation from East Coast financial centers to fund the ambitious plan announced the previous fall. The fact that the project required securing out-of-state financing underscores its immense expense and logistical difficulty relative to typical local infrastructure projects. Establishing the timeline and operational context, the when. Based on contemporary reports, the construction activity was documented in local media around the early 1910s. The Crystal Park Company announced work was resumed and that the thoroughfare will be completed by June 30th. This fixed, tight deadline suggests significant commercial pressure tied to opening the road in time for a profitable summer tourist season. Further chronological evidence is found in descriptions of the vehicles utilizing the road immediately upon its completion. Historical photographs depict a large sightseeing bus known as a charabanc, which is identifiable as a Packard truck from about 1910. Furthermore, the vehicle displayed pre-state municipal license plates, indicating that the road was operational prior to Colorado beginning official state vehicle registration in 1913. This analysis pinpoints the core construction and completion window firmly between 1910 and 1912. The purpose of the road was clear. It was to be the new automobile road to Crystal Park. It was intended for automobile sightseeing and served to connect the resort area complex to Manitou Springs, with plans for the Balanced Rock Station, a streetcar line building, to be converted into a central building for a campground. This confirms the road's explicit function as a high-altitude access route for tourist vehicles. The critical communications detail, the proposed wireless telephone. One highly significant yet often overlooked detail of the road's official genesis is the plan for advanced communication technology. Mr. Dotterer stated that the plan included the installation of a wireless telephone system between Manitou and the park, requiring stations at both the town and the summit. This inclusion is critical because in the period immediately preceding World War I, wireless telephony was cutting-edge technology. While presented as a tourist amenity, ostensibly for booking or emergency contact, the expense and specialized infrastructure required for reliable point-to-point wireless transmission over mountain terrain in 1910 far exceeded the typical requirements for a private tourist camp. The commitment of resources to this technology suggests a priority that aligns less with general resort operations and more with the specialized needs of entities engaged in high-altitude observation, signaling, or military communications testing, where traditional wire lines were vulnerable or logistically impractical. The sophisticated nature of this communications plan elevates the strategic value of the road far beyond mere scenic access. Third, engineering the ascent, the how of Crystal Park Road construction. The most telling evidence regarding external collaboration lies in the road's complex engineering, which required overcoming severe geographical constraints using highly specialized infrastructure. The technical solutions employed demonstrate access to sophisticated design expertise and substantial capital. Mastering the terrain. The specific engineering challenges. The road's route was a formidable challenge, requiring the ascent of the rugged Eagle Mountain. The course was characterized by tremendous zigzags, loops, hairpin turns, and climb through Sutherland Canyon. Successful implementation of a mountain road designed for heavy automobile use, such as the Packard Carabancs, mandated an extremely low maximum gradient to prevent overheating and power failure in the low-powered early 20th century motor vehicles. Comparative historical evidence highlights the demanding nature of this requirement. For example, Captain Charles Young, supervising the Army's road construction in Sequoia National Park around 1903, explicitly aimed for and achieved grades of less than 8% to ensure the sustainability of auto tourism. To meet similar standards, the Crystal Park Road construction required exceptionally precise surveying, extensive rock excavation, and professional-grade earth-moving capacity. This level of civil engineering expertise was generally possessed either by major railroad companies or by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, not typically by local resort developers. The unique solution, the Crystal Park Turntable. At the summit, located at Inspiration Point, altitude 7,045 feet, the road terminated with an extraordinary piece of infrastructure, a specialized steel automobile turntable. The function of this device was to allow large sightseeing vehicles to turn around efficiently within a confined space. In situations where mountain topography severely limited turnaround areas, the turntable eliminated the need for difficult, multi-point maneuvers or reversing on steep drop-offs. The incorporation of this turntable is an immense historical anomaly. Turntables were standard equipment in railroad yards and roundhouses, where their function was to rotate heavy locomotives in restricted space. Transplanting this heavy, specialized, and costly steel rotating mechanism onto a remote, high-altitude mountain road for purely tourist convenience represents a disproportionately large expenditure and logistical undertaking for a private company. The choice of such a solution indicates that the engineers faced non-negotiable constraints regarding the size of the vehicles that needed to access the summit, or the required speed of turnaround. Construction methodology and logistics. The physical construction of the road involves significant excavation and the construction of retaining walls to manage the extreme slopes of Eagle Mountain. Beyond the sheer labor of building the switchbacks, the installation of the steel turntable would have required heavy hauling capacity and precise structural engineering expertise. The transportation and installation of such a large piece of steel infrastructure into a remote location is a major logistical undertaking. The deployment of a specialized, high-cost asset like the turntable suggests the involvement of resources external to the typical capacities of a small resort company. The requirement to handle large, heavy vehicles, coupled with the immense financial commitment required for the turntable and the proposed wireless system, strongly indicates that the final specifications and execution of the road were driven by imperatives that transcended standard tourist convenience. It is highly plausible that the necessary technical expertise and logistical capability for the turntable's design and installation were provided by an entity with experience in heavy infrastructure, such as the military or a major industrial partner. The following table summarizes the key engineering features of the road and their significance. Crystal Park Road. Key infrastructure specifications. C. 1910-1912. Feature design. Characteristics, source, purpose, implication for strategic thesis, terrain. Conquered Sutherland Canyon. Eagle Mountain. Required extensive civil engineering. Cuts, fills, switchbacks. Scale and difficulty comparable to contemporary Army Corps projects. Maximum grade designed for early automobile chassis, esters 8%. Essential for safe and successful early 20th century auto tourism. Requires highly skilled surveying and construction labor, suggesting professional, military or railroad consultation. Automobile turntable. Permanent steel rotating platform at 7,045. Allows large carabancs to turn safely in restricted space. Suggests access to specialized engineering and logistical capability. High cost implies a functional need beyond simple tourism. Communications. Wireless telephone, planned, installed. Link the park summit to Manitou Springs. High military value for observation or signal transmission, characteristic of Army Signal Corps operations. IV. Investigating the hidden hand, contextualizing military and government road building. The specialized requirements of the Crystal Park Road, high-altitude access, engineered grades, sophisticated turnaround mechanism, and advanced communication do not definitively prove military involvement, but they align perfectly with the operational needs and established historical precedents of U.S. government engineering units during this period. Historical precedent. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and National Park Road Development, 1891-1915. The U.S. Army was routinely responsible for civil infrastructure development in the western United States long before World War I, particularly in remote and mountainous terrain. Beginning in 1891, the Army was tasked with managing and developing national parks, which included extensive road construction projects. A key precedent is the work conducted by Captain Charles Young, who supervised road construction in Sequoia National Park starting in 1903. Young's crews, consisting of civilian road workers supervised by Army officers, demonstrated the military's capacity to execute difficult mountain road projects, such as the extension to Morro Rock and the Giant Forest. Crucially, the goal was the construction of high-quality roads with specific low grades, e.g., less than 8%, to ensure tourism viability. This history establishes a verifiable procedural mechanism. The Army could and did provide engineering oversight and logistical resources for civilian-facing road projects without the project being formally classified as a military operation. If the Crystal Park Company faced engineering or logistical hurdles in 1910, leveraging the experienced Army Corps of Engineers for technical assistance, survey crews, or heavy equipment would have been a highly effective and pragmatic solution. Military strategic interest in the Pikes Peak region. The strategic geography of the Pikes Peak area makes it inherently valuable for military communication and observation. The road terminates at Inspiration Point, 7,945 feet, positioned directly below Cameron's Cone. This location provides an unencumbered high-altitude vantage point over the key transit corridors and settlements of the region. If the U.S. military, particularly the Signal Corps, sought to establish a wireless communication relay or a long-range observational outpost, which was a growing necessity as the nation began to focus on modern defense strategy in the pre-WWI era. The Crystal Park terminus would be an ideal naturally protected site. The planned wireless telephone system further solidifies this connection. While the Crystal Park Company announced the wireless system as a resort amenity, the technology itself holds much greater intrinsic value to a military agency seeking to test or deploy signal intelligence capabilities in mountainous terrain. The turntable's non-commercial utility. While the turntable served the commercial goal of handling tourist charabancs, its utility to the military is even more pronounced. Military logistical operations often involve the transport of highly specialized equipment, such as large radio antennae, signal processing gear, or early detection apparatus, that requires specialized, often large, vehicles. These vehicles must be capable of rapid and safe turnaround in confined areas. The immense engineered cost of installing the permanent steel turntable is more easily justified if its primary function was to ensure reliable logistical support for specialized, mission-critical government cargo, rather than merely improving the comfort of private tourists. The analysis of potential concealed military role, addressing the user's thesis. The convergence of engineering anomalies, the high cost of the turntable, the specialized grade requirements, and the planned high-altitude wireless communication system strongly supports the notion that the U.S. government, military, played a role that was not disclosed in the public relations narrative. Financial discrepancies and in-kind funding. Direct financial aid from the War Department to the Crystal Park Company is unlikely to be found in typical property or corporate records, as government agencies often circumvented public scrutiny by providing assistance in kind. This assistance would not take the form of direct cash payments, but rather the deployment of non-monetary assets. Engineering personnel. The loan of Army Corps surveyors or supervisors who could ensure the road maintained the low professional grade profile necessary. Specialized equipment, providing access to heavy equipment, particularly steam engines or hauling gear, essential for managing the rock work and, crucially, for transporting and installing the massive steel turntable mechanism. Technical consultation, providing expertise from the Signal Corps regarding the placement and implementation of the proposed wireless telephone system. This cooperative arrangement allows the Crystal Park Company, led by W.C. Dotterer, to achieve a highly ambitious and expensive project on time, the June 1st deadline, while permitting the government to establish a strategic infrastructure foothold at a key high-altitude location without the budgetary oversight or public notification that a formal military construction project would require. Personnel and engineering sourcing. The precision required for the engineered ascent of Eagle Mountain implies technical input that exceeded typical private contractor capacity in this era, unless vast sums of money were spent. Considering the established operational capabilities of the Army Corps of Engineers, it is highly probable that military engineering talent guided the layout of the road, particularly the intricate switchbacks and the planning for the grade, which had to be suitable for both civilian and potential military logistical trucks. The expertise to design and integrate a large, custom steel turntable in a remote mountain setting further points toward institutional engineering knowledge, such as that possessed by the Army or major railroad consultants. The altered story thesis evaluation. The suspicion that the official story was altered to cover the truth is analytically sound, given the context of early 20th century strategic development. There were two primary motives for both parties to maintain the facade of a purely commercial venture. Commercial preservation. The Crystal Park Company needed to sell access to an exclusive, scenic resort destination. Publicizing military involvement or shared access would undermine the romantic, private appeal of the park, potentially deterring tourists who associated military activity with conflict or restricted zones. Strategic discretion. The U.S. military often needed to conceal the establishment of new signal or observation stations to maintain a tactical advantage or operational secrecy. By collaborating on a public tourist road, the military gained immediate, reliable vehicular access to a strategic elevation, 7,945 feet, under the guise of supporting a local business, effectively normalizing their presence. The most plausible scenario confirms the user's thesis. The government supplied key technical expertise, engineering oversight, and logistical resources, especially related to the turntable and wireless planning, in exchange for permanent, undisclosed rights-of-way and guaranteed access to the Inspiration Point Summit. This arrangement transformed a private tourist road into an essential piece of dual-use strategic infrastructure. 5. Conclusion and definitive findings. Synthesis of findings: who, when, why, and how. The construction of Crystal Park Road was officially the undertaking of the Crystal Park Company, led by President W.C. Dotterer. The project was initiated and executed between 1910 and 1912. The explicit why was to capitalize on the nascent automobile tourism market by providing engineered access to the high-altitude resort. The how involved masterful civil engineering to manage tremendous zigzags up Eagle Mountain, culminating in the installation of a non-standard, costly steel automobile turntable at 7,945 feet. Furthermore, the company planned for advanced communications via a wireless telephone system connecting the park to Manitou Springs. Conclusion on the military involvement hypothesis. While direct archival documentation explicitly stating U.S. Army funding for Crystal Park Road has not yet surfaced, the overwhelming circumstantial evidence strongly indicates a concealed strategic partnership. The engineering profile of the road, particularly the high expense and specialized nature of the steel turntable, a railroad component applied to an autoroad, and the planned deployment of high-altitude wireless technology, points to an infrastructural undertaking that exceeded the typical resources and requirements of a private resort developer. Based on historical precedent, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers possessed the precise mountain road building expertise required for the project. The strategic value of the location for observation or communications, underscored by the wireless plan, provides a compelling military motivation. It is highly concluded that the U.S. government, likely the Army Corps or Signal Corps, provided crucial in-kind resources, engineering talent, specialized logistical support, or assistance with the heavy hauling and installation of the turntable to the Crystal Park Company. This support ensured timely completion and high-quality construction in exchange for securing non-publicized access rights and potentially establishing an unacknowledged signal or observation post at Inspiration Point. This cooperative arrangement validates the premise that the public narrative was streamlined to maintain the road's commercial identity and preserve the military's strategic discretion. If you enjoyed this, like, share, and subscribe. Thank you Thunderbird Perch for making this video possible.